welcome back, everyone. I'm going to skip us here to this place, and you will see other things in your handout about some of the examples from Chinese medicine that match up with each one of the states of consciousness. But what I want to do is I just want to kind of take us really quick to mythical, and just to point one thing out, which I think is real important. I mentioned earlier that there was a philosopher by the name of Zhou Yan, and he was the man that created natural philosophy. And it is from natural philosophy, and he referred to things as, it's called correlative cosmology. And he started looking at nature, and he started looking at how things were related one to the other. So he originated the yin-yang idea by looking at the relationship between the sun and the moon. And he also originated the 5-phase theory of how water feeds wood and how wood feeds fire. He just looked at all those relationships and how when you have a shift in one, there's a shift in all of the others. So I'm calling him out to you. And just to point out very importantly that the school of naturalists, their information, the yin-yang and the 5 elements, was pulled into the work that was done by the diviners and the astrologers. And the diviners and astrologers developed and started applying it in their work. And then it went from there to the physicians who ultimately connected it with the human body and the meridian system. So just wanted to give that little bit of background. And we are going to skip this because I want us to get into this opening the possibility for integrality. So, you know, in the work that I do with people, you know, I'm doing the same work that all of you are doing with acupuncture and Chinese herbs. I'm working with physical issues, but I'm also working with emotional and spiritual issues. And so when I'm coming from that place, and even with the people that have got a physical ailment, I'm thinking of healing as helping people to experience and amplify alternate frequencies of consciousness, all just what we just saw about the states of consciousness. And the more that we can all, our patients and ourselves, be in tuned with these other kinds of intelligences that live within us, the more likely we are to, you know, perhaps reach integrality and this kind of new state of consciousness, but at the very least to have more wholeness within ourselves. And so, you know, if we think, coming back to our states of consciousness, that, you know, most of us are kind of wired like this, that what we're trying to do with our clinical practices is we're trying to do this. So we're trying to give greater possibility by kind of amplifying and giving people access to efficient forms of these other states of consciousness. So, you know, so I'm going to do this very quickly. So I could reintroduce myself to you via states of consciousness to give you a sense of this. So, you know, here's mental consciousness, right? It's my resume. I could, you know, give you the laundry list of where I went to school, what I've done, blah, 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 right? It's very kind of the mental world. But if I'm going to introduce myself to you from an archaic standpoint, then you're going to kind of be looking at me, you know, this is kind of a bad picture of me. I'm trying to do an auric field, right? So you're trying to kind of see my energy body that extends out of me. And then you can also do it by feeling my pulse. Right, so that's really kind of the archaic realm. And then, you know, here's an image of me. I'm playing a flute. And if you came across me in, you know, this forest and all you hear is me playing the flute and seeing me there in my physical body, you can only take in my physical body and hear the sound that's coming from me. You're going to have a certain kind of impression of me and know me in a way that you would not know me by looking at my resume. You know, and then lastly, oh, there it goes. So there's some playing flute. And then lastly, if we go into mythical consciousness, so I'm showing this card. A friend of mine developed these beautiful kind of their archetypal cards. And this one is called Cosmic Ouroboros. And I selected it on my birthday. I do a ritual every birthday, and I did this drawing with these cards. And this was one of them. And it resonated with me because I feel like the work that I'm doing is, cosmic Ouroboros, where, the Ouroboros is a snake eating its tail. And this idea of taking something that's old and making it new again. So taking this old ancient knowledge and trying to bring it out into the world and serving it up in new ways so that we can digest it and bring it into our practices. So let's consider the states of consciousness in terms of their clinical correspondences. And so I'm going to give a case study for each one of these. So with archaic consciousness, we're ground of being, energy body. Clinical aspects are the pulse of the person and just their presence when they walk in the room, what we feel there. And diagnosis could also be off of the pulse and the energetic vitality. And so I thought I'd show a case study. So this is an archaic case study. I've got a woman who comes into my clinic. She's in her late 20s and she's anxious and nervous. Sleep is an issue as a result. She works out a tremendous amount, like too much. She's doing like a boot camp kind of workout 7 days a week. She's got a strange needle phobia. So if she gives blood, she passes out. And, but here she's come to see me as an acupuncturist. So, she got referred and so she came. She's got this weird work schedule that's not serving her and kind of feeding into her nervousness, anxiety, and sleep issue. She's happily married with no children. And so, her pulse is very slow, which is kind of a result, I think, of the heavy workout. It's thin, it's deep, it's hesitant, which, it's that pulse that it just comes up and hits, it just kind of goes straight up and down. It doesn't have a curve on it, which is an indication that a person is really overthinking things. They're kind of caught up in a loop. And I checked that out with her about how her thoughts were, and she agreed that that was the case. And then, skipping down to this third area, like when I sit with people in the clinic room, I just try to assess like what I'm feeling when I'm sitting with them. And that's sort of my way of using magical consciousness to diagnose, right? So I'm noticing what I'm feeling in my own body and kind of what I'm seeing of her energy body. And she's got a very fast energy, like she processes very quickly. All of her energy is very high in her body, and there's almost a kind of swirling that's going on. It's like she's not even sitting on the chair, she's perching above it. And I'm seeing her as being of the fire element. So, I'm seeing her really very much in kind of a mental place. And then we've got this magical because she's got this weird needle phobia. So there's something somatically that's happening that she can't control. And so what I do with her, and this is really kind of like a first treatment, I decide that I really need to drop her into archaic. And in the magical about the needle phobia, that's a longer term fix, and I'm going to, to the extent that it's a fix, and I'm going to work with her on that. That's going to take time. But so what I do with her is on this first treatment, I place her face down, give her aggressive energy, a 5 elements clearing, and then I do these other modalities to help drop her even deeper into archaic. So when she turns over, I don't do more needles. I basically do cranial sacral. I do some upper body zero balancing, which is a wonderful modality if you don't know it. You can do, compression kind of fulcrums to ground people as well as things to kind of expand them. And then I did some cranial unwinding of her 3 heaters. I just, wanted to just calm all that swirling energy in her body down a little bit. And then I gave her a homework assignment, but I asked her to give time to really seeing if she could drop down in her body. And I suggested that she do that by putting her awareness in her sits bones and her feet whenever she could think of it. And then I asked her to reduce her workouts. And so off of that, which was a very simple kind of treatment, she came back and literally after this one treatment, and she said that she was experiencing a new sense of confidence and groundedness. She had spoken up with her boss and requested that she wanted no additional work hours. And then over time, even got him to change her work schedule. So now she's working a daily daytime shift and is not going between day and night. She reduced her workout and she said she's got less fighting with her husband. So, just an example of like kind of going in that way was helpful. If we go into magical consciousness, right? So now we're in the sound, smell, and the physical body. We're looking at tendons, muscles, and flesh. And from a diagnosis standpoint, I think listening and sounds are a really big piece of it. But, this is a kind of listening. You're not doing the listening that you do if you're a 5 elements person where you're listening for the tones, whether they're kind of singing or or weeping, you're actually almost trying to listen for the words underneath their words, or you're listening for what they're not even saying. It's kind of a hard thing to describe, but I'm going to try and give an example of it through this case study.